The Sawblaze fight was one of the scariest fights I've ever been involved in, just because of what was on the line.
I wasn't scared. I'm not scared. It was, I was respectful.
It's always really tough in BattleBots because the sport is so destructive, but the community is so close.
I'm staring at the robot. Is this real life?
Today we're talking to HiJinx and Uppercut.
On this episode
of Behind the Battle.
Hey everyone, we're on with Alex Hattori. We're on with Jen from HiJinx. So Alex, tell me, when did you decide to try your hand at BattleBots?
I just sort of stumbled upon BattleBots similar to how I stumbled upon robotics the first time. So I was at MIT. I happened to meet Lucy Dew from Team Sawblaze. She was a TA for one of my classes as a freshman. It was kind of interesting. The class was it was called Mens et Manus, and it was sort of taking the MIT motto and putting mind and hand together. So they taught you some theories, and then you built things. And so that year, the class happened to be focused on building a speaker. First, we all built a speaker in groups from scratch. We even built the speaker cone originally. But then they said we're going to give you a budget and you can build a speaker of any kind you want. And I was like, well, I already built the speaker. What can I use my budget for? And so I built SpeakerBot. And I made a tiny speaker, and I spent most of my budget on like small robot parts. And then it was around Christmas time when I finished. So I took it Christmas caroling around campus. And actually, I happened to be walking down the street, and I ran into Woody Flowers, who looked at my robot, told me my robot looked kind of cute, and then we went on our way. And I was pretty starstruck, to come across him on campus. So Lucy happened to be a TA for that class. She saw I was interested in robotics, and she said, hey, there's this BattleBot competition coming up. You could build a robot for that. And then as for BattleBots, so obviously there's a huge BattleBot specifically community at MIT, and Fred Moore from Team Valkyrie, he was creating a team that became Road Rash at the time, and that robot wasn't seen on TV, but he recruited my roommate and I to help build the robot. So that was actually my first BattleBot. I worked on that my freshman year. Then there was a slight lull in BattleBots. I joined Sawblaze and then decided to create my own team after that.
So just to kind of get started, Jen, can you tell me how you got started in robotics?
My first actual robot didn't come around until 2015. And before that, you could be generous to say that the things I was making were robot-like. They were a lot of RC cars that were hacked to do things they were not intended to do. But my first combat robot was 2015, and we took that to DragonCon for the robot battles there. And then, sure enough, at DragonCon, I met a bunch of BattleBots people and had fun talking about robots and talking about the way that we blend weird art with machines, and got very inspired to build more and bigger and weirder and better. And then eventually it turned into BattleBots, me on BattleBots, which is kind of wild. It's been a short, interesting journey. I'm very happy that I went in this direction.
The people you met at DragonCon were Team Scorpios?
No, actually at that time, I lived in Baltimore, and the folks who went to DragonCon that year, I believe it was Will Bales and Charles Guan. Okay. And Charles Guan and we also race with the Power Racing series. So I had met him through PRS. And then later was oh, you also build robots. So the crossover between people who build homemade electric vehicles and BattleBots, that Venn diagram gets to be a circle. I was these people are great. I want to do cool robots with them all the time. So I was already into it, and now it's gotta be so in.
Tell me a little bit about how Uppercut came to be.
Uppercut was in development even back when I was on Team Sawblaze. So I've been building small robots for a long time. And my style is typically pretty different from what Sawblaze is. And I was a lot more excited about, obviously Sawblaze is a really cool and destructive robot, but I like the idea of launching opponents with a spinner. And so even when I went to filming for Sawblaze, and first of all, Jameson knew this, he mentored me fully knowing that in the future I might build a different robot on a different team. And he's just he's very supportive, and I've known him for a long time. So
he knew he was going to have to fight you one day though.
Yeah, we both knew. We were hoping it would be like a little bit better if it happened in the elimination rounds, because then damage doesn't really matter at that point. But unfortunately, we did have to fight in the qualifying fight night rounds this year. Yeah, even when I was at filming for Sawblaze, one of my teammates, or one of the Sawblaze teammates at the time, one of my good friends, Mason, who is now like one of the head designers with me of Uppercut, we went around the pits at BattleBots and we just asked all the other builders, like especially with vertical spinners, what size shaft do you use? What bearings do you use? Do you have any tips? And they were all just really welcoming. In particular, like we went to the Witch Doctor pit and Mike just was like, yeah, I have no secrets. I'll tell you whatever you want to know about how Witch Doctor works so you can build a robot. The fact that everyone was so open and willing to give us advice for building our first robot, like really contributed to how successful Uppercut was even in its first season.
Jen, when did you decide to try your hand at BattleBots?
Well, we actually applied, my team in Baltimore applied for season 2 of the current reboot, but our application was rejected. And we got the phone call from Greg Munson while driving cross country. The design that we submitted at the time was a vertical drum spinner. And he was like, nah, there's just too many of this in the field. If you want to compete, you need to come up with something new. You need to do something that's different. And that was the design challenge. So for season 3, applied again and was accepted, and then had about 5 weeks to build. It was very intense.
So this is season 3.
Yeah.
Which robot was this at this point?
That was Battle Royale with cheese.
What?
Yeah. Go back and look at the photos. I'm the redhead.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Do you still have any sort of affiliation with Battle Royale, or are you?
No, at the end of season 3, the team, there were some life things going on, and the team kind of went in different directions. And when we announced that it wasn't coming back, Diana Tarleson from Scorpios, instantly, she was literally in my DMs that 10 seconds later, like, Jen, we need a welder. I was like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna do that. So I jumped over into Scorpios. But it's interesting, because now I'm back with horizontal spinners and working with Orion Beach, and he's just such an incredible engineering talent. One of my greatest fears was actually, we're bringing back a horizontal spinner, and my first horizontal spinner was not the most effective robot. And I lived in terror for a good portion of this build that I was going to bring another horizontal spinner that didn't work properly. And like, I was obsessed with making sure we came correct. And Orion was on point, on it all the time. He is amazing to work with. If you have the opportunity to work with Orion Beach, take that opportunity.
Alex, when you're not battling robots, you're going to school, right?
So I actually just finished my master's a few months before filming of this season. So I'm now no longer a student.
So you're not doing school anymore, and you're not currently in the BattleBots season. What do you do when you're not battling robots?
I still spend most of my free time building robots of various sizes and tasks, but also outside of that, I'm also a professional yo-yoer. So I compete around the world, and I also design my own yo-yos. I get those made. You design your own yo-yos? Yeah. So I started off yo-yoing sometime around middle school, and at the time I was not an engineer. But over the years, like, I've started to realize, like, there are ways I can improve my yo-yos. There are certain preferences I have for my yo-yos. And so I actually have a yo-yo sponsor, and they asked me if I'd like to design my own yo-yo. And so I sent them the CAD files, they got them made, and then I compete with them to this day. So this is like one of the ones that I would sort of compete with. I think it's slick. This one happens to be made out of titanium and stainless steel, just because I was messing around with it. But typically the ones I compete with are made out of aluminum and stainless steel. And then just sort of to have a fun challenge and to make something more interesting, recently I started making square yo-yos. Whoa. So even though it's a square, it still functions like a normal yo-yo. It's made out of machined aluminum, and it has a ball bearing just like the other ones. And you said you're a professional. You're like a world champion, a national champion? Yeah, 7-time U.S. national champion, and then 2nd in the world. Jen, I hear you're an artist. What can you tell me about that?
I started off as a computer science major when I went to college originally, and wound up kind of bouncing around a little bit into physical sciences, and then dropped out for a little while, had some fun life experiences, went back and got a degree in art. So I am working as a manufacturing engineer, and I do use CAD and CAM and machine tools and analysis in my daily life, but a lot of the way that I build is informed by art. And because I build UAVs, it's really useful. There are times when making hardware to go inside a particular wing structure, it's not straightforward. You can't have L brackets. Sometimes the hardware that I'm designing have sweeps that match the interior of the wing, or they have almost biomorphic shapes because we're getting pieces of hardware into locations to do specific things. Honestly, I think it would be great if more artists looked at engineering as like ways to use their skills. And I think it'd be great if more engineers kind of broadened out and took on some art. I think that crossover is really useful.
So you used to be on Team Sawblaze, and this season you had to go up against your mentor, Jameson. What was that like?
Yeah, it's always really tough in BattleBots because the sport is so destructive, but the community is so close. I said, we learned a lot about building robots from other builders, but we also learned a ton, obviously, by being a part of Jameson's team. And so our robots are actually pretty similar in overall structure. So obviously there's like one's an overhead spinner, one's just a vertical spinner. But the back end of our robots are all made out of machined aluminum, so you can keep it light and stiff. And also typically those don't take hits. And then the front of our robot is all welded steel, because that's where you typically get hit. And it's much easier to cut out a piece of steel and re-weld it than it is to fix a broken billet part. It's really not desirable to have to fight your friend, especially so early on in the competition. But there's no hard feelings between either team. We hung out together right before the fight. There were no secrets between us. We knew exactly what each person was going to do, roughly. Someone actually in our Reddit AMA asked us, what was your first interaction with Jameson after the fight like? And my response was, it was so normal, I don't even remember what it was. That fight was super exciting, but also as a driver, I don't really get to see much of the fight, to be totally honest. I just sort of go into this mode of just focusing on the robot. All I see is uppercut and maybe a bit of the opponent if they're in my field of view. And then I didn't even notice the explosion during the fight. So the first time I saw it was in the recap when Chris and Kenny were like, "Did you see what you did?" And I was like, not really.
I mean, it was all in good fun, and there was definitely a GG after that. Everybody said good game, and
what I'm really glad is that the Sawblaze team had no problem repairing. With the next day, they were ready to go again. They swapped out these plates. They had plenty of spares. Had it gone the other way, where Sawblaze had done some catastrophic damage to us, I don't know if we would have been able to repair in time for our next match. Just because with the COVID lockdown, we had literally no spares. We came to the competition with 2 of these motors, and Uppercut uses 2 of them. So had Sawblaze cut through one of these, we wouldn't have had our new weapon motor upgrades for the rest of the season.
Oh no.
The Sawblaze fight was one of the scariest fights I've ever been involved with, just because of what was on the line. Even if he nicked one of these motors, we wouldn't be functional for the rest of the competition.
So this season, Chomp made its debut in the competition as the Walker bot with 500 pounds, and you got to fight her.
Yes.
Talk to me about this fight with you and Zoe Stevenson.
Of the robots that we could potentially fight, I'm not gonna lie, I was intimidated by Chomp. But Orion said, this could be a really good fight. These are 2 very different robots. And I thought about it, Zoe Stevenson's kind of my hero. So we thought about it, and I sent off a little 1 a.m. text "Hey, Zoe, our team would really like to fight you if that's okay." Next to Chomp, HiJinx looks like a dragonfly harassing a bullfrog. It looks absurd. They were always able to hit hard, and now they're twice the weight, so that hammer is hitting with all of that extra gravitas. I wasn't scared. I'm not scared. It was I was respectful, super respectful of the quality of their work. And and that fight, that could have gone a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I am so happy watching from the side. There was a moment where we're going in for a hit, and HiJinx just slips under the skirt and comes out the other side. And when that happened, I just about lost my mind. I was like, what? Oh, yes. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't know that could happen. And again, millimeters from putting that weapon right into our weapon stack.
Ooh.
like,
It's time to talk about the fight with HiJinx.
I can tell you that is another fight against close friends of mine. Last summer, I happened to be working in the Bay Area where the HiJinx team is located, and like all the builders are very welcoming. They had watch parties while I was there, and so I went to them. But the HiJinx team in particular, they like made sure I was taken care of while I was in the Bay Area, and some of them like they drove me around to see some companies I was interested in looking at and whatnot. So I'm very close with them. Also, my mom is very close with that team.
getting the seat against Uppercut, I feel like that may have been a little bit of bad luck on my part. And it's funny. It's funny the way Alex Satori is such a nice person, and he's such a good builder and a good driver. And his mother is also, she's absolutely lovely. I ran into her a few times on site. She's just so supportive of not just Alex, but everyone. So I run into her, and this is a true story. I run into her in the ladies' room, and we're masked up, and we're standing apart. But she goes, "Oh, I have a present for you," and I was like, "Really?" And she opens this box, and it's a bracelet with an owl on it. And she gives it to me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you."
So for the HiJinx fight, we put on our thick wedge. We decided to drive towards the middle of the box and let them come towards us and see what happened. And it was a kind of short fight. We ended up hitting HiJinx in the blade, and they flew out of the arena again and got stuck against the sidewall.
It's worth noting that in the season 4, Scorpios was on a winning streak until we fought Uppercut, and that ended the winning streak. That's what really prompted me and Orion to talk about what kind of robot we might want to build next, like something that would really combat vertical spinners. In a way, this was the best worst case scenario, because on the one hand, well, this is how you're going to test if you've been thinking correctly this whole time. And on the other hand, oh, it's Uppercut. Crap. We get into the fight, and and then it was over. And what had happened was there were 2 contacts, weapon on weapon, and our weapon bar on the second hit, the entire 44 inches of AR 500 bent, and our 250-pound robot went across the arena and into the slot. I watched that happen with a kind of shock, with like a disbelief. Like the robot, 2 hits, bam, and then I'm staring at the robot like, is this real life?
That's outrageous. Like, you see what Uppercut is doing, right? He's wrecking everybody.
Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the sport. So.
No, I'm not saying this in a bad way. I'm not just saying you're going around wrecking your friends. I'm saying that you're winning. Like, you're doing great.
Thank you. Yeah, like we're just happy to see Uppercut function at all, especially given the circumstances. So anything that happens is a plus for us.
Alex, this has been awesome. I've loved hearing about Uppercut. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you for having me. I always love talking about Uppercut. So.
Jen, this has been absolutely amazing. I've loved hearing everything about HiJinx and your career as an engineer artist. It's been awesome. We'll see you later.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Join us next time for more exclusive interviews on the Vex Robotics channel, and make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss a second of the action. Thanks for watching.